So I probably fail in this area. I have never, ever personally had any real experience or thought about this concept of colourblind casting, for example, until it was kind of put to me in an article that I was this poster child of this colourblind casting context. I think the reason why, though, is probably because I never wanted to be an actor. So I wasn't aware of the lack of it. And I'm not a very judgmental person. I don't tend to be very... I don't tend to see people in boxes very easily. So I probably just didn't notice. Like I was thinking, oh, that was a good show. Oh, did you see the character? He did this and he's really happy and and I wasn't going, oh, they're all white and he's white and she's Chinese or... So I think I probably wasn't thinking about it. And I spent a lot of time, as I said, overseas. So I was seeing a lot of TV in other countries. So maybe I wasn't really, like flicking to it. So by the time someone pointed out to me that, did you know, I mean, and I will no, before that happened, the reason it came up, I've been asked to come and talk to a reporter for Equity. And I was shooting on this show and it was with a really great sort of like, I suppose, indie director, Lily Cheng. And she's Eurasian and she really pushes this idea. So she uses me for a lot of things and I love that. But she was like, yeah, oh, that's great, and I understood what she was saying. And I understand that other people's experiences have not been the same as mine. And so from that perspective, of course, I'm very willing to say, but if 40% of the population are not Caucasian, then surely at least 30% of what's on TV should not be Caucasian, for example. But then, being me and being someone who always goes, what's the other perspective? Yeah. The flip side argument I kind of came up with was I was like, yeah, but you know what we're not realizing is probably, I know a lot of people who, who are on TV, you guys would say they're all white, but they're not because they're Italian and they're Greek and they're, other nationalities. So from that perspective, there is a diversity. Just because they're not clearly Asian or Indian doesn't mean there isn't diversity, but it's not visible. And so then there's that question of you should make the diversity visible, which I understand. And then I was like, yeah, okay, so that's fair. So, writing stories, etc. But then I would have these people. So the two stories I'll tell you that kind of made me go, I almost don't want to be part of this conversation. The first one was an Asian actress, a gorgeous Asian actress. She's lovely. Who came up to me once when we were shooting on a show and actually said to me, she goes, oh, yeah, I saw you in that. I could have done that role. I could have done it just as good as you. In fact, I probably would have done it differently. And was in hindsight, competing with me to let me know that because of she feels really, hard done by because she doesn't get cast in anything, that it's my fault. And actually she would have done my job better. And I thought that was really weird. It was a very unusual way to look at things. And then the other one was another friend of mine who's of an Indian background said to me, I can't believe they didn't give me that. They didn't even audition me for that role. And I was just like, but you're part of a family and your two parents are white. So how could you have that role? Yeah. And he was like, well, they could have just written the story so that it was different. Yeah. And I was like, well, no, because that's actually about the story. The story becomes very different if these two parents have adopted a non-Australian child, which the process of doing that and the reason for doing that and all of this. And he was like, but that's not the point. And I said, but it is the point because in the end, if you really think about it, what are we trying to do? We're trying to tell stories.
Be authentic to the story.
Yeah. And I suppose as a writer myself and as someone who has a very complex story, I go, that's actually quite selfish. That's an actor going, but I can be that person. I'm like, but you haven't thought about what that person is in the story, and then they did come out with Secret Life of Us, for example. I think it was Time of Our Lives, where they actually had two parents who'd adopted a Chinese daughter, and I was shortlisted for that. And a girl down in Melbourne got it, which is, great. And I remember thinking, wow, that's a really difficult story to manage because you've got this, this Chinese girl who's been adopted into this family with these, three other children. What's the dynamic? And then when they didn't deal with the dynamic, everyone was like, oh, it's really weird how the story doesn't deal with that dynamic, as if they just try to ignore it. And I'm like, okay, so is the story meant to, can we not have someone in there who's just that person? And flip side for me, I've been really lucky. I've definitely played very, very Asian chicks. I have no issue with that. Okay. Somebody once said to me, how do you feel about having to have an accent in Please Like Me? And I said, what's your problem with that? And they said, well, you're a very good actress. You don't need to have an accent to act. And I said, no, I don't. But the character is based on Josh's dad's girlfriend who is Thai with an accent.
Yeah.
So are you saying that either she doesn't exist or she's not relevant?
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, but, and I said, no, but that's the thing. There are a lot of Asian women with accents.
Yes.
So if I'm playing an Asian woman with an accent, as long as I believe in that,
you're not doing it in a way to make fun of them. You're just
No.
actually being genuine to that character. Mm.
And also the flip side, I sort of said, and sometimes we do write crazy people, like Spider-Man doesn't exist. He's not an angsty teenage child who can actually shoot webs out of his hand and hurt people.
Yeah.
But it's a character and people play that character. And as long as you are happy to commit to the character, this weird kind of reverse racism kind of thing that happens is really kind of, I find a little bit, it's almost like, you know, the white person going, oh, that's really terrible. That shouldn't happen. And I go, why? Well, because you know, as Asians, you shouldn't be judged. And I go, okay, but I don't necessarily think that putting lots of Asian people on TV is necessarily the solution. There's a bigger problem that they're responding to by then pointing it out in the television. And the flip side for me, I've been very lucky. Obviously, I've also been cast in lots of roles that were not specifically Asian, were Asian by name, but not by character in terms of culture background. So I've probably never really had that problem myself. It's very easy to not complain about something when it hasn't affected me. So, yeah.
Yeah, but thanks. That's really interesting to hear your perspective on that. So cool.